she has won the right to rest peacefully in Texas waters.
Howdy and hello, I'm Travis, Vice President of Ship Operations for Battleship Texas Foundation. Today we're coming to you from A36P, a 3-inch ammunition magazine down on the first platform. That's 5 decks down from main deck, not counting the half deck. This video is our year-end review, so we know this isn't the end of the year, but it's the end of our first year of operating Battleship Texas. On August 1, 2020, we took over operations from Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, and we even presented with a key to the ship and all that kind of good stuff. So no, it doesn't start the engine, but that would be pretty cool. Anyways, and so we thought we'd go through and talk through some of the things that we accomplished through this first year. Obviously we're in the 3-inch magazine, so the very first project that got completed in this year was our volunteers completed the loading in and the restoration of this 3-inch magazine. These cans here came from Hawthorne, Nevada several years ago. They were going to be scrapped. We purchased them from Hawthorne Ordnance Museum, and who got them from the Army, and got them to Texas, got this magazine restored, stabilized, painted, and then we finally were able to get all their cans cleaned and down into here. In each can there would have been a 3-inch round, and the cans open, you pull the round out, and then it goes to the ammo hoist. We're going to do a video a little bit later on about 3-inch ammo handling, and really like all the ammunition handling on the ship. So from 20 millimeter all the way up to 14-inch. So, and kind of how those evolved over the time. So stay tuned, come back. We'll have another video a little bit later on that. So again, this is our first major project that this is the first project that was completed under our watch as stewards of the ship, and we're awfully proud of it, and we're awfully proud of our volunteers who made it happen, put all the work into it to make it happen. Speaking of volunteers, we've had a lot of volunteers helping us with NRG, and our volunteer pool has grown from being fairly moderate size up to we're over 160 volunteers right now, and that number keeps increasing. Our volunteers do anything from being docents at the Lone Star Flight Museum at our exhibit there, to doing outreach stuff, to doing restoration work on the guns, and then now we're fixing to start back up a little bit of some projects on the ship while we're waiting to head out to dry dock. So if you want to be a volunteer, you can go to battleshiptexas.org, and there's a volunteer link there. Just click on it and fill out the form, and we'll put you through the vetting, and we hope to see you aboard. All the work that we've done this year has been important, but I think the most important work that we've done has been the major tow prep for the ship, making the ship stable for a tow to a shipyard. The bulk of that work was stopping the water coming into the interior of the ship. In fact, 95% of that work was stopping the water coming into the ship. The best way that we accomplished that was using divers with Resolve Marine. Great bunch of guys, great company to work with. They came out, we spent from August to January patching the ship, and then once we got the tanks stable where the water flow coming in was manageable, could be controlled, and absolutely stopped temporarily, and then we pumped in expanding foam. And it wasn't just like pour it in or use a can of great stuff. This is industrial foam. In total, we put in 700,000 gallons of expanded foam. The way that we accomplished the major leak reduction was to first hit tanks with divers from the outside, sending divers out to address any leaks. So using salvage patches, splashed on epoxy to stop any leaks. Then pumping the tanks down. Once the tanks were stable, washing the interior of the tank down to get any residual rust scale, mud, and other debris out of the tank. There's actually parts of falling ladders, parts of falling platforms in these things, to get all that stuff out as much as I could, and then line the lower parts of the tank where it still might be damp with plastic sheeting, and then start injecting the foam into the tank. And by ejecting, I mean there's literally two guys down there, one with a hose, one's a safety man, and they're just spraying it in layers that are like 18 inches thick, unexpanded, and then the foam would expand 30 times. You know, it's a massive expansion rate. So we ended up with 700,000 gallons of expanded foam, and that may not seem a lot, but once you visually look at it on the damage control chart behind me, this is a cross-section diagram of the ship. So anywhere that you see orange, here, right there, so these are all blister tanks right here, and the foam indicates the level that the orange indicates the level that the foam is in, all the way down to here. So you see that they don't wrap all the way under the ship. They do in some places a little bit. Those have been really problematic areas all throughout the ship's life. I think we will do a video on the blisters because I think they're really fascinating, both from a technological standpoint and an adaptation to address, you know, a design deficiency in these ships as technology evolved. So as you can see, they're here. You know, don't mind this here. There's foam all the way down through here. The marker kind of got rubbed off in places. So, but foam's there. We even did some foam in some internal tankage. These were fairly suspect tanks. Anywhere that we put foam, it was areas that we felt that either could be compromised in tow or has shown that it is presently compromised. So the biggest volumes of these were like some of these bigger blister tanks back here, and then a D12 here, which is the aft trimming tank. It has been problematic as one of the primary sources for flooding events on the ship, for the interior of the ship, since I came aboard in 2008. The first major flooding event that I was witness to was 2008, and it was basically there was a small leak there. It was trying to be patched, and the side blew out of the tank. And that's dramatic. It was, you know, about like this, but it's still a lot of water coming in. And then it was repaired. And then, you know, fast forward to 2014, that was another, well, D12 wasn't a source, but D26S and D26P. D26P was a source for a major leak in 2014. I'm sorry, in 2012, not 2014. So we've put foam in these areas as mitigation factors during a tow, and also as a preventative now while the ship is still afloat. The foam is not a cure-all. So right now the foam will not be left in the ship. Our permit with the Texas Historical Commission says that we will remove all the foam that we've put into the ship. If we come across a perceived need, or we perceive a need in the future, and our engineering says, hey, you know what, it'd probably be best to leave that there, then we will. We'll take that into advisement, and you know, if that's the case, then we'll get a permit modification from the Texas Historical Commission. Texas Historical Commission, for you guys who don't know, that those guys oversee everything that we do on the ship. They any work that is disruptive to the historic fabric of the ship, the historic nature of the ship, we have to get their sign off and their blessing. So yeah, that's what we have going on as far as phase 2 vessel prep. As we get closer to the ship departure, Resolve and Valcor will remobilize on the ship. We'll do our final tow prep. We're at like 90% completion for the ship to be able to go out. At that point, it's just, you know, unhooking from the monopiles, throwing additional generators on the ship, more redundant pumps, and you know, hooking up the tow throttles, and let's go. And that's really simplistic, but that's what basically is left to be done to the ship. Once we get closer, we'll do a whole video on our tow prep and what it's taking for us to get to this point, besides the quick hit that we've done on the phase 2 stuff. While phase 2 was going on, our crew was helping Resolve you know, do what they needed to do to prep the ship. In addition to all of that, those guys were working on these 5-inch 51s. So they were taking all the auxiliary accessory components, if you will, off. So the elevating gear, control assemblies, the training gear, the director indicators, the operator platforms, the siding yokes, and they got all the hardware, the securing hardware that holds the mounts to the deck loose. They got the breeches open. It's been the breeches here for these guns. They haven't been open since, I don't know, probably the 1960s. So we got them open, and I want to say Kyle, Marco, and Greg did an absolutely fantastic job. They were dumping several hundred hours into each one of these just to get them apart and do them without causing a lot of damage. Heating, using induction heating tools, using oxyacetylene to heat things. The breeches alone, we put in, they took the longest. We started soaking them probably 18 months ago from right now. And so they probably had, at least 6 to 8 months of oil seeping into them because they were just frozen. And we tried heat, but the heat just wasn't cutting it. These things are massive, and they will just soak up heat and say, meh, give me some more. So we applied a steady, low pressure to them over a long period of time, and they would gradually just break free, then come through with just the same kind of gradual application of force. The guns, they're actually turned right now broadside. They were pointed all kinds of different directions. So these two guns were actually pointed forward. The aft guns were pointed aft. And then, but to get these off the ship, there are two holding down clips inside the carriage or the stand. And to get to them, we have to turn them so they're broadside to the ship to get to these little access ports to get into them. That was a challenge in itself. And again, that was lots of steady application of force and lots of Croyle. That stuff's great. It's not an endorsement for them, but we use it a lot. So, and you might ask why we're taking, using a kind of a slow and steady approach with these. Well, one, they're one of a kind. These 6.5" 51s are probably more, in my opinion, they are just as historic, if not more so, than the 14-inch guns. And you may be like, well, what? They're 14-inch guns. Well, the 14-inch guns that are on the ship are the original 14-inch guns. Well, 9 of them are, 9 of the 10. They were pulled off the ship again. The originals were pulled off the ship in the early teens. They were re-gunned. They went to a different ship, to another ship, and then they came back to the ship in 1944. The 5-inch 51s, on the other hand, they were re-gunned in 43, so they saw action at Normandy, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, whereas the 14-inch guns that are presently on the ship only saw action at Okinawa and Iwo Jima. Oh, and southern France, these guys, the 5-inch 51 saw action as well. That's why I think these are more important. That's why we're taking a much more measured approach, to the point that we have been working with a major university in Texas with their conservation lab to address the corrosion inside of the gun tubes, because we want these things to last much longer than what they have and receive much better care than what they have. As always, we're not really casting aspersions on anyone. It is what it is. We're just moving forward. So one of the projects we've been working on since June has been rehabilitating 4 of these 20 millimeter mounts. The ship currently has 8 20 millimeter mounts, and with a partnership with Texas Parks and Wildlife, we've rehabilitated 4 of these mounts and got them all cleaned. If you saw our update video 2 weeks ago, we talked about a little bit about what was going on in the restoration of these mounts. This is largely done. Really, by the time you watch this video, all the touch-up paint that still needs to be done will be done. These guns will be completely rehabilitated. They look fantastic to me. I mean, I've only seen them with just paint just chunked on them. They've been parkerized. They look roughly how they should look, when they were in wartime service. The only difference is that, there's a few pieces that are missing that we couldn't track down or weren't going to have made, non-critical pieces, and just a lot of pitting from all the deterioration they got over the years. While that was going on, we, in the middle of all of that, we reopened the ship July 3rd and 4th, and we had over 9,500 visitors to the ship. I think the number was like 9,708, something like that. And it was really great That means we averaged over 4,700 visitors per day. It's great seeing that many people come out and see the ship. The only two times that come to my mind when the ship has seen that many people in a single day has been the 2014 Centennial Celebration, when we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the ship's commissioning. And the other time was Navy Day 1945, when the Secretary of the Navy mandated all ships, Navy ships in U.S. port, open their doors and let the general public come on. Well, at that time, Texas had around 4,500 visitors on Navy Day 1945. We also have concurrently running the restoration of the 3-inch 50s. We have 4 that have been in process since September. They are largely done. They need some touch-up paint, a wipe down, final coat of oiling all their moving parts, and then each of them are missing 2 gears. And once we get those gears in, they're being made by a company out in Odessa, and once and donated to us. And once we get them in, those 4 guns will be complete, and we'll bring in the next pair of guns. The July 3rd and 4th thing was like one way that to support the ship, folks coming out, that supports the work that we're doing here. And another way is like on these 3-inch mounts, the base has ball bearings in it. It has 138 ball bearings. It has 2 races, a lower race and an upper race. And the lower race is, well, what we found when we've opened them up is they're full of water, they're full of muck, degraded grease, and the bearings are they look like the surface of the moon. And the upper race bearings are so-so, they're much better looking. So if you would like to support what we're doing here, you can purchase one of those ball bearings on our website. But don't be surprised if you buy a ball bearing and you get one that looks pristine. That's one of the ones that came from the upper races. We're not going to send you a brand new ball bearing because, well, we need those in the mounts. So, and speaking of new ball bearings, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the folks who have supported this project. Texas Bearing has donated all the ball bearings that are needed to replace all the ball bearings in all the 3-inch 50 mounts. So that's something like 1,380 ball bearings. NRG has donated the use of this facility here and their services, which has been machining parts for us or blasting and painting for us. They're actually working on the ship's siren right now for us, the rotor on the siren. So we're hoping to make that thing go off here before the ship leaves. Certified Pipe Services Houston has done blasting and painting and hauled guns for us and things like that. Those folks are great. Houston Bearing has made some gears for us as well, and those guys have done a great job. I'd also be remiss not to point out Brendan and Lauren's Manufacturing in College Station. They've made a lot of itty-bitty little parts for us that are hard to find, particularly hardware. There's hardware on these guns that were common in the 30s and 40s that aren't made anymore, and particularly in the sizes that we need. And there's especially hardware like these carriage bolts here. They're not carriage bolts like you think. They're actually just called carriage bolts because, well, this is the carriage that holds the 20. These had to be custom machined because they were in such bad shape when we pulled them off the gun, corrosion, whatnot. So they had to manufacture these, and then the matching set that goes on the side. We had to have 2 sets of those machined. Brendan and Lawrence did it. They did a fantastic job. We've got some other projects working with them. Once we get our gears in from Odessa, we'll tell you who that company is, and we want to shout their name from the rooftop as well, because again, we want to acknowledge everyone who's helping the ship and who's helping us get this stuff done. You've seen from our updates how busy our fall's been, how busy our winter's been, and how busy our spring has been. Our summer has been busier. We were funded through Texas Parks and Wildlife, through their generosity to get the propeller conserved. This 30,000-pound hunk of bronze, the conservation on it is largely complete. It's got a little bit left to do on it, and it'll be done. We're going to drop a video on the propeller talking about its history and what all these little pitting is right here. And someone brought up in a comment a while back what these holes are right here. I found the answer, so you'll have to come back and watch it in a new video in the next video, which should drop in a couple of weeks once we get the propeller finalized and the conservation or put back together rather, and put in its temporary storage position. So again, Texas Parks and Wildlife also funded the conservation of the original Battleship Texas's bell. That's the 1895. We showed you that one in the video 2 weeks back. And the bell for this battleship, which is dated 1913. And I figured out why that bell is dated 1913. The contractual completion date for the ship was 1913. Obviously, the ship wasn't commissioned until 1914, and that's when the Navy accepted the ship into service and accepted it from the builder, Newport News. You can go see that bell on exhibit at the Lone Star Flight Museum. Yeah, that's another thing we did this year. As we had developed a partnership with Lone Star Flight Museum. They've given us an exhibit space. We built an exhibit talking about everything that's going on with the battleship over the last few years and what we're doing right now and what the future is looking like for the ship. So if you want to see that, come on out and support the Flight Museum. Come see us. We have docents at the Flight Museum every Saturday, and they're talking about the gun trailer. So I don't know if you've seen it before, but we have a 20 millimeter anti-aircraft gun mounted on a trailer that kind of looks like a gun emplacement on a ship. So it's at the Flight Museum. We have a docent there every Saturday and talking about it and interacting with the public and letting you get up on it and turn that thing around and pointing at airplanes or drones or whatever. Again, support those guys, support us by going and seeing that exhibit. The last thing I want to touch on conservation-wise that's got done this summer is the silver service for this ship, which was, again, funded through Texas Parks and Wildlife. We got the silver conserved. If you've seen it in the wardroom of the ship, it's beautiful. Now that it's gone through conservation, it's even more beautiful. I didn't know that was possible, but it is. We're excited to be able to show that to you when you come see the ship once we get reopened. We certainly plan on showing all these things that are being conserved to you. The 1895 bell will end up at the Lone Star Flight Museum on exhibit next to the 1913 bell. It'll be the first time that those two bells have ever been in the same room together. They've been on the same ship since 1948, but it'll be the only time that they've been actually together in close proximity to each other. Another big milestone that we've had here, well, at least for us at Battleship Texas, you guys might think it's silly, but we set up our online store. It's another way of support that helps us do what we do and take care of the ship and the things around the ship. Without that support, we can't do what we're doing. We can't take care of all these guns. So we appreciate your support. We try to offer new products out there to help and stuff that you guys want. If there's a product that you want that we have, you want a t-shirt or something like that, let us know and we'll see what we can do. If there's demand for it, we'll put it out there. You know, we've got our new ball caps and you can get your ball bearings and paperweights and things like that online. We're going to be able to do, we have a few more things cooked up. We might be dropping later this year. All of those things come to support what's going on here. I mean, it supports our operations, which is doing all this stuff and, you know, taking care of the ship. Every little bit helps. We appreciate your support because, like I said, there's a lot that still needs to be done. We haven't even touched our 40s yet. That's going to get geared up a little bit later this year once we get finished with the last 4 20s, which we think will happen probably early October. Then we'll start on these bad boys. The 5-inch guns, they'll be over here shortly after the ship gets to the shipyard, and we'll start working on those. Actually, they'll have the highest priority to get done because of how historic those guns are. Again, thank you all for your support. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Kyle finally told me what this Twitch thing is, and you know what? I think we're gonna set up a Twitch account, and we're just gonna get a bunch of guys on there. We're gonna play Call of Duty World War II. We're gonna play the Texas map over and over and over and just point out the historical inaccuracies with it. So if you know that one, you know that's a joke. So stay tuned. There'll be more to come. I think we'll drop a video next week. We haven't determined what it is yet, but there'll be videos coming. And then a good one will be, for sure, will be the propeller in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned and thanks again. Later, y'all.